All right, so we're ready? Okay. So, I am Kate Johnson. I'm the university chaplain, and I feel extremely new because I've only been here since August, and the person before me was here for 32 years, and the person before him for nearly 40. So in terms of this role, I'm like newborn. And it's been a really, really fun transition, and I'm really glad to be doing this today. So you saw the title of the talk is God's Ant and Other Metaphors, and I've ripped that off from this book, Pastrix, which I'm going to read you a chapter from in a minute, and the chapter is called God's Ant. And it's Nadia Bolz-Weber's one chapter from her memoir, an important story of healing by engaging different ways of talking about God. And which is why I felt it was a good fit for today, the theme being wellness. And people tend to think of religion as being something fairly prescriptive, and something that's put upon us. And I think it can be helpful to people when it provides structure and discipline and those kinds of things that we all need in our lives. But also it can be really harmful when it's overly prescriptive because it doesn't speak to our personal situations or where our heart is. And as I was thinking about what I would talk about today, I particularly focused on female imagery of God, or religions that draw on the divine feminine female concepts of God, ways to empower women through religion and spirituality, because I thought that would be a good fit for the audience here, and something that I personally am very concerned about. As is Nadia. So the plan was to open with Nadia, so let's hear from her. Nadia Bolz-Weber was raised in a very conservative male-dominated church in the U.S. And this chapter tells that part of her story and sort of the beginning of her healing from some very negative messages about what it meant to be a woman in that particular Christian church. God's Ant. There's a quote from the Bible here from 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. Let a woman learn in silence with full submission. I permit no woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She is to keep silent. 25 years before I would preside at a comedy club funeral, I got baptized. It was a Sunday in the spring of 1981, and I was wearing white sandals. The preacher, in his denim-colored polyester suit, had wound down his sermon and had given an altar call. If you are ready to make your life right with the Lord, or if you desire to be baptized, come forward now as we stand and sing. The people stood and sang, and I walked down the aisle toward the pastor. Another man handed me a card and a golf pencil as I sat on the padded pew. After I checked the box indicating that I desired to be baptized, another man approached the pulpit to make the announcement to the congregation. Then I told them which man I wanted to baptize me. In the church of my childhood, it was taught that the age of accountability was somewhere around 12. To hit the age of accountability was to spiritually go off your parents' insurance. At age 12, the clock starts ticking, spiritually speaking, and you know right from wrong, and because of this, you are accountable every time you fuck up. If you sin, knowing right from wrong, and then die before you choose to be baptized, you burn in hell for eternity. This is when kids start choosing to be baptized. The lag time between entering the age of accountability and having your slate wiped clean through baptism can be terrifying. Many of us would pray not to die in a car crash before we were baptized, like other people pray not to get sick before their employee benefits kick in. 12-year-old Church of Christ kids experience a wave of devotion like a great awakening comprised only of 6th graders. Because age 12 was the age of accountability, it was also the age at which boys could no longer be taught in Sunday school by women. In accordance with Timothy 2:12, women were not permitted to teach men. Therefore, a 12-year-old boy had more authority than a mature woman. Women were not allowed to serve as elders, preachers, or ushers. For some reason, we didn't have the authority to pass a man the collection plate, but we did have the authority to pass that same man a plate of fried chicken and potato salad an hour later in the church potluck. Dale Douglas was the first man I ever had for a Sunday school teacher. He was soft-spoken and funny and parted his head full of thick, sandy blonde hair so far to the side that it looked like an unnecessary comb-over. Dale started where the woman who taught us the year before, when she still had the authority to do so, had left off, testing us to see how many facts we knew about the Bible. I knew a lot of the answers, and it took just 3 weeks for him to have a special meeting with my parents, at which he informed them that they would have to do something about me. I was answering the questions too quickly, and it was keeping the boys in class from having a chance to answer. To their credit, my parents quietly thought this was awesome. They did encourage me to allow space for others, but really they just loved that I knew my Bible, and they weren't about to shame me for it. Precociousness gave way to sarcasm as my ability to analyze the doctrine and social dynamics at church developed. The moment I was able to recognize the difference between what people said, such as all sex outside of heterosexual marriage is forbidden, and what they did, have clandestine affairs with each other, and the difference between what they taught, women were inferior and subordinate to men, and the reality I experienced in the world, then why am I smarter than all the guys in my Sunday school class and even the teacher? I knew that I had to get out. I was a strong, smart, and smart-mouthed girl, and the church I was raised in had no place for that kind of thing, even though they loved me. By the time I left church, I questioned everything I had ever been told and knew, based on the criteria that I was for sure not Christian. But I still didn't manage to be an atheist, as one might expect. I had never stopped believing in God, not really, but I did have to go hang out with his aunt for a while. She's called the Goddess. My first experience with Wicca was in the mountains west of Denver, on a brown, grassy hill above a yurt, a round, nomadic-looking structure, and inside of which all the lamps were covered with red scarves, making the interior look like an outdoorsy bordello. I was about 20 years old when my friend Rena, who is as straight as they come, asked if I wanted to go to a lesbian wedding. I replied, more than anything in the world. So we drove the 45 minutes listening to the Indigo Girls just to get in the right sort of womany groove, and I held a huge bowl of strawberries on my lap. Apparently, lesbian weddings are often potluck. This is a Wiccan wedding, Rena informed me. I didn't entirely know what that meant, but it sounded not Christian, like me, and I suspected that my parents would not approve, and that there would be likely hummus involved, so I was fine with it all. I loved the service, and had never seen so many strong women. Women with shoulders back and hair shorn tight and nothing to hide. We stood in a circle and sang some simple chants, and the brides were so happy. Like any other brides, only these two wore Renaissance fair-style garb and were marrying each other. There was talk of perfect love and perfect trust, and we fed each other bread and wine, saying, "May you never hunger, and may you never thirst," and it felt like communion. There was something safe about being around women. They let me hang out with God's aunt, and I couldn't help but think that she liked me. I spent a few years with these women, marking the seasons and sharing our lives, and always there were potlucks. We talked of relationships and pregnancies that didn't last, and bosses and roommates that didn't appreciate us, and how much garlic to add to vegan salad dressing. At 1 month's potluck, every one of us brought dessert, and no one thought there was a problem. There was no doctrine. We never talked about belief. We just shared our lives and spoke of the divine feminine in ourselves and in the world. The goddess we spoke of never felt to me like a substitute for God, just simply another aspect of the divine, just like God's aunt. When I tell other Christians of my time with the Goddess, I think they expect me to characterize it as a period in my life when I was misguided, and that I have now thankfully come back to Jesus and to my senses. But it's not like that.